Welcome into another edition of the GigEm 247 Sports Podcast. I am Andrew Hattersley, joined by Brian Perroni, who was on the road basically all of last week. Brian, how's everything going? Is it good to get back home?
Oh yeah, still going out to schools in the Houston area, but
Yeah,
I was in San Antonio and Austin, and those areas don't typically have a ton of recruits. This year's different. The next two classes, so it was good to hit some of those places. And man, unlike Houston and Dallas, they don't get that many visitors, so they are really excited when you come to town. So yeah, it was a lot of fun.
yeah, they roll out the car, but
Oh no, for sure. Yeah, one.
they roll.
Except, dude, there was star testing going on, so these schools practice at like 6 a.m. Like, I think it's incredibly rude to me, who is a night owl and who's still up at 1 in the morning, just like, oh, I got to get up and drive on 35 tomorrow at 5:30. So this should be fun. So I
Yeah,
really think they should have been more considerate to me. But
you're a better man than me. I mean, when I was looking at Tyler's practice schedule, and you know, appreciate Coach Holmes having me out last week. That was tremendous seeing Derek McFall, and he was fun to see in person. I looked at the practice schedule, and every day except for one was at 6 a.m. And I was like, all right, I think I know which one I'm.
oh, I've definitely decided my visits on that before. But it just being in, since I was in Central Texas trying to hit as many as possible, it was,
You kind of have to
like,
do
I
the
got to
six
go.
a.
Yeah, I got to go to all of them. So, but I didn't realize, man, the traffic on 35 from San Antonio to Austin. I'm staying in San Antonio. Austin Vandergrift practices at 7 a.m. And then I looked at Google the night before. It told me it was an hour and 15. Then I look at Google right before leaving, but I didn't realize how many people commuted to Austin. It tells me it's 2 hours. So that was a lot of fun. I had to leave pretty early for that
I
one.
know it's one of those things. The map seemed to kind of change like night from to
Yeah,
night.
I mean, 35 is just the worst road ever.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's as bad in Dallas as it is in
Oh,
Central
it's
Texas, but
bad.
it is
It's
terrible.
it's it's real bad. It's never fun to drive through. And I know, so one of your first trips I know was to see Colton Thomason. What were your impressions kind of getting to see him and go to Smithson Valley?
All right, so I posted some videos of him. I mean, it was against air, but he's at right tackle this spring. Big difference from playing guard each of the past 3 seasons. I mean, he's 6'8", 325 pounds. So you don't normally see that at guard. So it just was, we had seen him, or I'd seen him at tackle at the Under Armour underclassmen camp, and he
Yeah.
looked good. He looked good in one-on-ones. He had some wins, but curious to see how he looked in pads. And I'll tell you what, looked just as good in pads. So again, it was against air, but I thought when he committed, I was like, he looks like a tackle, but he had the experience of guard, and it probably was more likely because you never know about the feet and things like that. But I'd say now I like the early evaluation by A&M even more because I think he can play tackle, right tackle at least, and be really effective out there. I mean, he moves his feet well for a really big kid. I say big kid. He's lost, 75, 80 pounds from, even a year ago. So that's impressive, but he's still, a big kid being 6'8". So the fact that he can stay out on the edge, if you, let's say you had hit, Deuce Father on one side and Colton on the other, those are two really,
Twin,
big, yeah, bookends over there.
basically the twin towers. And credit to him, he's just totally, just all the videos you see and pictures, and when we've both seen him in person, he's just totally reshaped his body. And it's kind of cool to hear him talk about it too. I know when I saw him at the underclassmen camp, he was giving other kids advice throughout the camp about everything that he did and his routine and how he was able to do it. And so
Well, but which, by the way, his routine is he eats
he's
5 times a day. Now, I
and,
understand that it's
and
getting
he
your
runs.
metabolism jump started, but I wish I could eat 5 times and lose some weight. I'm
You
all
you
for that diet.
you and me both. I kind of take the same attitude. I've gone the other direction. He went the 5 times a day,
Yeah.
and he goes. I think he said he goes running quite a bit. He's really turned himself into a guy that, and it's a huge development, like we talked about last week, with just the tackle class and trying to find tackles in this cycle. To
Oh yeah,
have him
so
with
being
the
on the road, I saw several offensive linemen. So there were a lot of coaches out watching them, and just the interesting thing to hear from some of these college coaches is how hard it is to find tackles this year, not just in the state of Texas, but all over the country. So the ones that are the true tackles out there are worth their weight in gold, probably literally this year with
Yeah.
NIL. I mean, I don't know what gold is a pound, but to make that 300 pounds. But a
Yeah.
guy who is a pure tackle can have his choice of anywhere is incredibly extra, is always valuable, but extra valuable this year because there really just aren't any. So that's another huge, plus with Colton Thomason if he can play tackle.
Here we go. We're gonna start getting NIL like gold gloves for offensive linemen
No,
now.
for sure. And if there's a gold company out there that wants to tell us how much and maybe sponsor the show, we'll take some free gold. I
Exactly.
saw Bijan Robinson is doing Lamborghinis. We'll do gold.
Yeah, we'll do gold.
Cash for gold. Is that a thing? Can you give us gold for cash?
We will.
Wait, that's just
We,
buying gold. Gold for
we
cash.
have got a GigEm 247 Sports like logo in the background. We will happily change that to
Yes, to gold.
anything for an NIL deal.
Yes.
And I know another one, a couple others you saw were Ian Reed and TJ Shanahan in the Austin area. Both of those guys, I feel like kind of project more as guards and interior guys. And I know with TJ Shanahan, he's just a fun guy to watch in general because, I mean, he brings he's a great interview off the field and a super nice kid, but on the field brings a total mean streak. And I know your video
Oh yeah,
started going
people
by.
saw the video. His teammate. I mean, it was okay. Now his teammate should have been ready, holding the bag, but it wasn't really the most full speed of drills. And he just comes and just explodes into the dummy and sends his
Yeah.
teammate flying. And
His poor
yeah,
teammate.
he was pretty proud of that when he saw the video. What's funny is that was not the only time that during drills that his teammate, maybe even that same guy, ended up on the ground. Like, so, when TJ was in Orlando, we had a picture of him and he had short hair, cropped pretty close.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I mean, he's just got the long hair, just, the beard, and he just plays like that, man. He just plays like
He
a
lets
little
it
mauler.
go. I mean, when I saw him last year, I think it was against Aikens, and it was a 40-0 game, and he drove a kid from the 20-yard line to midfield, and the ref said, maybe that's enough. And then he did it the very next play again. And, in a 40-0 game, maybe it's
I know,
okay
but hard to
kind of
penalize a guy for
take a
doing
break
something
on a guy,
legal.
but no, there's no letting up with him. And
Actually, so funny side note on that. So Austin Westlake that's probably the most intense high school practice I've been to, at least a spring practice. And they're at the end, they're about to do team probably for a good 45 minutes. And the coach is like, all right, everybody's live, including the quarterbacks, hit everybody. And I just like see the quarterbacks like, are you kidding me? Just looking at him. He said, don't take them to the ground, but I'll tell you, they were taken to the ground some. So yeah, that was a pretty intense practice. And I was, and TJ's when he threw the guy was during the half speed part. So yeah, you can imagine, what he was like during the full speed.
Full speed, what he was going through.
Oh, yeah.
And, still delivered one of the best quotes when he told me that, he loves to knock people to the ground, allow them to kind of start to get back up, then knock them down again, and then help them up at the end of the play. I mean, that just kind of summarizes him to a T. But
I didn't record a lot of pancakes in my career, but I did like to help people up too. For some reason, I think it's more demoralizing when it's almost like they take pity on you instead of, just ignoring you and leaving you laying there. I don't know. It's just,
you're kind of
I could be totally wrong, but the psych out games seem to be more like helping them up.
You're kind of sitting there thinking, "Don't help me up." Like, let's
let me
get up on my own. Thanks. Like,
exactly. Like, oh man, this guy's looking at me like I'm a child.
Exactly.
Which people do look like a child next to TJ. So we talked about, but we didn't really talk about his skill set. So he plays.
I was gonna say, get into.
He plays tackle for Westlake right now. He had when he first moved last year, he was at guard. He eventually switched around with Connor Robertson, who went to Texas. Connor had sort of an injury deal that was better for him to be on the inside. It was better for TJ to be on the outside. Being brand new and not having known the playbook. He's still on the outside now, but really the consensus among people I've heard from is guard. It's what I thought as well. And just he's just a thick kid and just so good in run blocking that it's hard not to like him on the inside. He's he's not as big as Bryce Foster, but he's sort of got that barrel chest build like Bryce does. So I think that he probably ends up at guard at the next level.
And I agree with you. I was with a coach too last year who was among the first coaches to actually offer him. and it was at that Aikens game. We were talking about TJ Shanahan, and he really said, I think he's a pure guard at the next level, and he's going to be a really good one. It's not to say that he's not going to
Yeah,
be an
this is
offensive
not an
line,
insult to him saying
but
that we
it
like him
just
at guard.
his frame and his size. I think he's going to end up being a guard at the next level, and kind of a guy that you definitely want to run behind. Um, and I think A&M has kind of put themselves. We talked about this before, but A&M's put themselves certainly right at the forefront, and with him and Ian Reed, it's going to be interesting to see. And Jaden Chapman's another guy that um, has an official locked in for this summer. It's going to be interesting to see if they set how many of those guys they kind of set up with Colton Thomason, because he's kind of emerged, I feel like, as kind of the vocal leader of the offensive line and
Oh
recruiting
yeah,
guys to join him.
he's been in the ear of TJ Shanahan a lot. They've been talking
Yeah,
about scheduling that visit together, and he's also been talking to Harris Sewell from Odessa Permian,
yeah,
who is as of now is planned to take an official the same weekend as Colton. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean Colton has definitely been really vocal about trying to get these other linemen with him.
Yeah, he's kind of emerged. Him, and I feel like he's been the big kind of guy driving the push, and I think Anthony James does some work behind the scenes as well. He's not really a vocal guy on that regard, but
No,
certainly
there's not a Bobby Taylor this year
no,
like there was
and
last year.
we get that question all the time. Like Bobby Taylor was rare in how many times he went to A&M. You're not going to get a Bobby Taylor every single class.
Yeah, I mean, he had the official recruiting house, so every time he did an Airbnb, I mean, yeah, that's just you're not gonna have somebody setting up like every home game weekend. And then
yeah,
when he got hurt at Katy, he couldn't really play his senior year. That gave him even more time to be at
exactly.
A&M and be around and
He
have his
basically
recruiting house.
was part-time recovery, part-time recruiter, and just basically he loved it too. That's what he wanted to do, and he took a ton of passion in it. I know another guy you saw just switching to the defensive side of the ball was Johnny Bowens, and what you kind of make of what you saw from him, and
So I've actually seen Johnny quite often.
yeah,
They were supposed to practice when I went to see him, but because of the rain, had some issues with their practice field, so they were just in the weight room doing squats. And he's a pretty strong guy, but at 6'2", 260 or so,
yeah,
I think he'll probably play at 285. A&M has talked to him about playing, staying on the edge, sort of how DeMarvin Leal had been, also moving inside some. And, from the same high school as DeMarvin Leal, it's easy to sort of make the comparison. But I think he'll be sort of that role. And, he's a guy that I know that our rankings guys at 24/7 are a little higher on him than the rest of the industry. But I think people will probably see his senior year. Judson's got a lot of talent coming back. They did not make the playoffs this past year. I think it broke like a 37-year streak or something, but they have a new coach, and it should be interesting. But he's a guy I can see why A&M really liked him. He had a great camp last summer, and just just that quickness. You don't really see that out of him. And like I said, watching them work out, you could also see the explosion with them doing leg workouts, and I could see why they like him because you know it's hard to tell much during workouts, but we've seen him in action, and good player. I good play, and may not be the most talked about because he's a 4-star. His ranking's not quite as high as some of the other defensive linemen A&M has signed or gotten committed, but uh, they're going to be hard pressed to keep him out of the rotation.
yeah, he's a projection. I mean, they're projecting on what they're going to be able to do with him in a weight room and all that. Another guy on my side that I saw last week was Jonte Cook.
Yeah,
Always a fun,
tell me about Jonte.
always a fun
He's a
guy to
fun
talk
interview,
to.
right?
Always a fun guy to talk to once you get him going. We laughed off camera about the trophy stuff, and and still said he chuckles when all that stuff gets bantered about and all that. He's people have to realize a lot of times he's just joking. It's just who he is. He has fun with the process.
No, and he said he had to be fair, right? Because the
He had to be
first
fair
video
because
was the
first he
Texas
did it at
trophy room, and it
Texas.
was a bunch of
First,
swimming trophies.
yep,
So then he saw A&M's trophy room, and it was a bunch of Emmys for the
yeah, a bunch of the 12
12-man
man production
productions.
stuff.
Yeah. So
And
he had fun at both schools'
yeah,
expenses. He was fair, like he said.
he
So.
was he was fair. He had to give it to both, and but I think his constant point he brings up is he's trying to find a school that he can win a championship at, and that's kind of where he mentioned it. But yeah, no, he's a fun interview, and I thought was really open and honest about where things stood. I think he's gonna probably wait on the A&M and Texas officials until the fall, and he's a guy I could see not making a decision until basically the early signing period because I think he wants to see. For one, he wants to for A&M. It's very clear, and I don't think he's made any secret about it. What Evan Stewart does,
Yeah, he'll be
and
watching one
he's
particular
going to be
player.
one. He's going to be watching Evan Stewart and what happens with Evan Stewart, and that's going to kind of be the big thing. Like he said, now that they've got a guy like Evan Stewart, let's see what happens and let's see what they do with the offense and all that. And so that's going to be the big thing. And then with Texas, he spoke very highly of Quinn Ewers. He's been watching Quinn Ewers for a while, but he wants to see what Texas looks like on the field in the fall. And the expectations are that from his perspective, Texas is going to take a step forward, and whether they do will probably have a big impact on what happens with him. And then I wouldn't sleep on Florida. I think Florida is a school that he's brought up to me a couple times. Has really good relationships with the Florida staff, and they're kind of quietly. I think there right now. I think a lot of people think it's kind of a Texas A&M battle. It was interesting. Alabama
Yeah,
wasn't
we talked about that
would
last week. We're not buying it quite, but
would
do
still
think do
caution
think they're
against
back
that. But I
behind
think
them. Yeah.
I think Florida is a school to quietly just at least keep track of, and Michigan's in there as well. And then it sounds like he's going to take an official to Jackson State as well during the fall. But really, it's going to come down to what happens on the field, and I think that's really what he's looking for. He's going to take his time. He's in no rush to make a decision as of right now, and I expect him to probably be at Texas and Texas A&M's pool parties and in the summer, and then come back in the fall. And like you said, it's like an hour and a half. Well, we had a discussion about how far it is from where I am versus where he is, but he said he can get down there in an hour and 20, hour and 30 minutes.
Drives fast, man. That's
That's what I
that's
said.
impressive, but a little scary there.
That's what I said, because I said, well, it takes me 2+ from here in Dallas, and he said, man, he's like, how it only takes me about an hour and a half. And I was thinking, how fast are you? How fast are
Yeah.
you? How
I mean, he
fast are
is
you
down a
going?
little bit, 35 more, but yeah, not quite that much. Now,
Yeah.
there's
So,
another guy actually you saw last week, and
and
I'm
then
curious because
I was
I
gonna
have not
say,
seen him in person. Derek McFall
I
from
was gonna
Tyler High
say,
has been to A&M several times. He
cons-
played quarterback, running back, and wide receiver
yeah.
as a sophomore this past year. Has serious speed. What did you think about him, and where does he project?
Consider me a big fan of his. I mean, he played just during the time I was at that practice, and the weather was terrible on Thursday, and so they were indoors. But he played some cornerback, he played running back, he played receiver, can play quarterback. They've got some options at quarterback now, so I would expect him to play more wide receiver, running back, and cornerback. But an explosive first step. That's one of the biggest things that I think kind of stood out, and blew by a couple cornerbacks for touchdowns. I think he caught 3 or 4 touchdowns during the time that I was there. Adjusts well to the ball in the air. And when we were talking afterwards, it's going to be really interesting to see how schools kind of pitch him, because Texas is pitching him as a running back, with Tashard Choice kind of leading the charge there. And he talked about, he likes what they've done with Bijan Robinson. Asked him what A&M said, and he said, A&M tells me wherever. We have not got a position set for you. You could
I mean,
be a
that's
running back.
actually a pretty common theme with A&M lately is,
Yeah.
hey, we're just going to get this kid on campus and then figure it out. So
Yeah.
it's
They
probably true what they're telling him. Most kids want to hear athlete anyway, but
And he said, I'm an athlete. He's like, I can play wherever. And so, and with him, I think it's absolutely true. I think he's a guy that's going to continue to. I mean, beware of, as well, of Alabama. He kind of mentioned. I know a lot of kids mention it's their dream school, and that's kind of what he used to describe Alabama. And so, Alabama, I certainly think will be in the mix as well. But with A&M, he said they're pitching me as an athlete, and that's exactly what I want. And so, he's very high on A&M. Said they're definitely amongst his top schools right now. And um,
If you were
he thinks
recruiting
they're
him,
really
where would you play him if you were recruiting him? You've seen him in person. I haven't seen
I'd
him in
probably
person
play
yet.
him as a slot receiver, and a guy. He kind of almost looks like a guy that could be maybe an Ananias Smith, where they've kind of put him in the backfield a little bit, put him at running back. Uh,
Yeah, because
he
that
can
was his
play.
primary position was running back. He
Yeah,
played, like you said, quarterback, receiver, but yeah, he primarily played running back. So Texas, you can see why if they've seen film there, but he's also not the biggest kid, right?
no,
Not
he's a little bit smaller, and he was a track kid this spring, and then kind of focused on football a little bit more down the stretch. But with his quick step, it's gonna be fun to watch him in the fall. That's definitely gonna be a spot I'm gonna get out to and see him and just see how many different ways they're getting the. When you look at, I think he had 1,200 all-purpose yards last year, and I don't think that's even taken into account what he did at quarterback. I think that's just between what he did at receiver and running back. And
yeah.
so he's not the biggest guy. He's pretty strong though. He's kind of built in the upper body, and it's gonna be fascinating to see how when we get to next year and we're sitting a year from now, whether schools are pitching him as an athlete or a slot receiver. I think he fits best as a slot receiver, and
I mean, is he going to
that's
be
kind of
playing
where he works
cornerback
most.
this year? You said on
He wor-
defense.
he worked at cornerback
Because
too.
that could be interesting too. I mean, that's a lot of those East Texas kids. They're just athletes. You get them. I mean, that's a valuable position with, especially if you're 5'10" or however tall he is at corner, you can make
Yeah,
a lot
and
of money.
he could flip his hips and kind of adjust. I mean, again, it was indoors, so it's hard to see a ton of what he can do, but just looks like a really fluid athlete. I think that's the best way I'd probably describe him. He kind of touched. I know there was a debate going on the board, and he kind of mentioned with A&M that A&M really felt like a family environment, and a lot of
Yeah,
kids.
he's been
He's
multiple
been
times,
multiple
right?
times, and one of the things he said is, the moment he shows up, they're there to greet him. They're there to welcome him, from players to staff to everybody in between. I think he really feels comfortable around that staff, and that was one of the first places that TJ Rushing, which is why I wanted to kind of talk with him about where they're pitching him, because TJ Rushing was one of his first stops
Yeah,
right after the spring
that's
game.
his recruiting territory, but still,
Yeah.
it helps to have a cornerback coach have his eyes on you if you can potentially play cornerback.
Exactly, exactly. So, it's going to be really interesting to kind of see where they where they where they where they kind of sell him on. I think it's truly going to be an athlete, and that's going to kind of be the prevailing message. And then the other one I thought was interesting to see was and tremendous hospitality down there. Speaking of Tyler, was going down and getting my first look at the two Chapel Hill kids, Demetrius Brisbane
Chapel Hill was really good this year, and
and
it was a
and
pair of
Ricky
freshmen
Stewart.
running the show. So get to
And
know that school, everybody.
yes, and I will tell you, there are quite a few other kids, just maybe not on the A&M level, but they've got some good players over there and have built up a ton of talent. And it's funny talking with Demetrius Brisbane. I said, you guys got a
So
good group.
Demetrius Brisbane is a QB, Ricky
He's
Stewart running back. Both of them are freshmen.
Yep.
Both have close to double-digit offers already.
Yeah, I think Ricky Stewart had close to 1,000 yards rushing last season. The thing about Demetrius Brisbane, it's going to be interesting to see, whether schools recruit him as a cornerback or quarterback or an athlete. He could throw the ball in the run yesterday, and just what he showed on that side. He feels like a guy with his athleticism could play wide receiver, could be kind of a defensive back, and
Oh yeah,
and
you watch him on
he's
film,
working.
and you watch him on film. I mean, he explodes when he takes off. He goes. I mean
Yeah,
he gets up to full speed. So yeah, I figured he could play pretty much anywhere he
and
wants
he
to.
was working on some defensive back drills. They kind of do with the way Chapel Hill does it is the first half of practice is kind of offense, do some team stuff, then they go into defense. And both Ricky Stewart and Demetrius Brisbane were working on cornerback drills and backpedaling drills. And so, they're kind of working on everything during that. And, they've got some good looking linemen there and just a lot of talent. And it was funny talking to Demetrius Brisbane. And I said, you guys got a good looking group here. And he said, yeah, we had a good looking group last year too. was like, well, yeah, true. You did get to the state semifinals, but those
Yeah.
two were a big reason for it. Just as really good young players, and neither holds A&M offers yet. I would certainly expect by this time next year A&M would be in the mix at least for
Yeah, I mean,
what these two are.
you never know with running back, but Brisbane is the type of athlete that A&M has been recruiting. So, yeah, I would
Exactly.
think eventually they will throw their hat in the ring,
Yeah,
for a
and
guy
it's
like that. I mean, he's like a Bravion Rogers. He's like a Derek McFall. I mean, just somebody who does a little bit of everything.
yep, absolutely, no doubt, and it's a school that I think a lot of coaches are going to be rolling through the next couple of years because they are just loaded with talent. And
You haven't lived in Texas this long, but Chapel Hill's also known for their sausage. So, maybe
oh well, now
they'll
you
become known for a little bit more than just just the Chapel Hill sausage. Because I don't think a lot of probably even Texas high school football fans know that school exists because it's
yeah
sort of in the shadow of the Tyler ISD schools.
yeah, and it's only a short drive. I'll be back down there this fall, so I'll have to now try out the sausage there. I did not know that, but
Oh yeah.
um, that'll be a stop during the fall. But we'll be
Same thing
we'll
with
be
Pittsburgh. If you're ever in Pittsburgh, Texas, they're famous for their hot links. So there you go. There's your
I'm
two
sold. I'm sold.
places that are known
I'm
for
sold.
sausage in East Texas.
I'm sold at the barbecue. We'll be, it'll be interesting. You and I will both be traveling around Houston and Dallas these couple of days. I'll be out to see, Isaiah Robinson this week and kind of get an update on where he stands. And, he'll be at A&M this weekend. So, I think A&M it's going to be interesting to see how they kind of re-engage with him and see where things fall with him. And I know you'll be going around Houston as well this week. So with that, we're going to take a quick break. After the break, we're going to talk a little more A&M baseball. But they're just keeping on right now.
And
And
I'm going to give you some basketball insight, so
yeah,
make sure to stay tuned for that.
yeah. Well, stay tuned for that, and we'll be right back right after this quick break. All right, welcome back to the GigEm 247 Sports Podcast. So, Brian, gotta talk with you about a little bit of baseball. So, I'm sitting at a basketball tournament this weekend, kind of watching the highs and lows of what was going on with the baseball team, and Twitter. Twitter is always a fun read during
Oh
when
yeah.
that's going on. What can you say about just what this team was able to do, especially on Saturday, being down 9-0 and coming all the way back to win it with a walk off and by Brett Minich.
Okay, so fans saw there was a bit of a glitch with our software, I guess, and so they saw a little inside baseball behind the scenes, and
Yep.
my headline was A&M comes back, but then loses the lead again. Uh, it just isn't something we've seen in the past. Under there were some good teams under Rob Childress, but they would not have. Actually, I say that. I think in 2016 they did overcome a 9-run deficit, but it was in non-conference play. A 9-run SEC deficit against South Carolina isn't one of the teams at the top of the standings, but they do have a series win over Texas this year when Texas was number one, and a good team. And so coming back from being 9-0 in the middle innings, having not done anything, to then taking the lead in the bottom of the eighth, then giving up the lead, Jacob Polish, so Jacob Polish has been incredible at getting out of jams, but he has, prior to his jams, gotten into some trouble, giving up some runs. That's what he did. Got out of a jam again to limit it to just two. So A&M lost the lead in the top of the ninth, then comes back, and Brett Minich has 2 outs. He's up there and hits a home run to center field, walk off.
Just
That doesn't
incredible.
happen under Childress. And I mean, clearly Schlossnagle wasn't up there batting, when Minich was, but just seeing how this team, is just resilient and didn't give up. And a lot of times, maybe normally you would have just started putting random pitchers out there just so you didn't waist arms for Sunday, but A&M didn't do that. Despite having given up those 9 runs, it was a struggle for Micah Dawes and then a struggle for the other pitchers. But A&M didn't do that. They were still going after South Carolina from the mound, which is big. And I think they saw that they could score runs because the day before, Nathan Detmer, who was coming off 2 out of the past 3 weeks, he was SEC Pitcher of the Week. He didn't even last long enough to get a decision. A&M still wins 16-4 in the opening game. The bats just couldn't be stopped, and also they were drawing walks, which is not something the team has done well at before this year. So drawing a ton of walks. I think they had double digits in both the first 2 games, which is ridiculous. Shows a lot of discipline at the plate. So yeah, I mean, this team showed why they have been able to win now 5 series in a row, why they're up to top 10 in the country. Was that Saturday game just encapsulated that. It showed all of that in one.
Yeah, to your point, they had 10 walks in the first game against South Carolina, and then 5 in the second game. And so
okay, there were a few hit by pitches too. So yeah,
hit by pitches.
It wasn't 10. Okay, it wasn't double digits, but yeah, it was a lot.
But to your point, I mean, they're just finding different ways to win, and just the explosiveness offensively and the way the way they're able to win games and just, I mean, putting up 29 runs between the first 2 games of the series is just something you didn't see in the past, and just the consistent offensive firepower and different guys contributing. I mean, just looking at the 16, the first game, it's different guys. It was Ryan Tagash, it was Jordan Thompson, it's just different guys every night that are stepping up. And to your point of the resiliency, it would be easy to just mail it in a 9-0 game and say we'll come back and try to win the series tomorrow. But to come back and get it done, and I have to give kudos to Andrew Monaco too for just a tremendous call on the radio of that walk-off home run. It's really impressive to see what they're doing week after week. There's been no letdown over the past couple of months. And I know Sam, who does a lot of our baseball stuff, have been cautioning people, you're probably going to have some weekends where they pick off a good team and maybe drop a series they shouldn't have. And, it's going to kind of be uneven. This team's outperformed every expectation and now is inside the top 10 in the D1 baseball rankings, and has actually been extremely consistent throughout.
Yeah. So we talk about that. So Sam definitely was right so the first 3 series of SEC play were a win at a then top 10 LSU team. A&M won the first 2 to take the series, but then they lost to unranked Auburn and Alabama, which is basically what, we sort of were expecting, where, ups and downs. And turns out that Auburn and Alabama are better than people thought. I mean, Auburn's been in the rankings lately as well, but then A&M just goes on a tear and has now won 5 in a row. They've won 6 opening games in a row, which is huge. If you get that Friday night win or Thursday night, if the series starts then with Detmer, I mean, that's huge. So he's been, key to this team, because it's much easier to get a series win once you get the opening one, because they had 6 Friday night wins in a row and then also 5 Saturday losses in a row until they had the comeback. It was almost 6 in a row. I mean, it's just sort of, Micah Dawes has seen some struggles in his starts, but also hasn't gotten the run support that some of the others have. But he got it this time around with 13 runs. And also give credit to, I think it was Logan Britt that was down to the final strike of the game prior to Minnick's walk-off and ended up drawing a walk, showing just that discipline at the plate. So he drew a walk to get on for the tying run and brought the winning run to the plate.
Yeah, just being able to put pressure on pitchers and make things difficult. Good things are going to happen for you, and just being able to get runners on base and in different ways. And now they look ahead to close two more SEC series to go against Mississippi State and Ole Miss.
Yeah, so those 2 teams were both in the top 5 to start the season. Yep. Mississippi State is the defending national champion, and both have struggled. So Obviously for the RPI purposes, A&M may want them to be a little better, but it presents two really winnable series. And if A&M could close the the season with 7 straight series wins against SEC programs, they would likely end up with a 3 seed in the tournament. I mean, that's huge, and it would probably put them in position to be a top 8 seed, which would make them a super regional host.
Just incredible. And it's and they've got a midweek game against Incarnate Word mixed in there as well. But they're looking at the way this team is playing and what they've done. Doesn't feel like there's any reason that they're not going to be able to close out strong these last 6 games of SEC play and put themselves in position to do exactly that. Brian, also going to need your help on this other one.
Basketball.
Basketball, yeah. So KK Robinson,
yeah, that's what I was going to say. The famous KK Robinson, where he's from. I'm just testing your knowledge.
He's from Arkansas.
Yeah, you're right. He came from Arkansas.
A top 100 prospect from Arkansas. A&M loves going after some Arkansas kids. And
did he also have a career game against the Aggies? Was this another time where he was putting on a tryout?
No, he didn't. It wasn't quite that, but he actually did. One of his final game that he played actually was against A&M, and pulling up his stats right now, he had his last game. He scored 5 points in 4 minutes of action.
All right. Well, that's more than a point a minute. That's Hall of Fame level stuff. Well, maybe not Hall of Fame, but that's NBA All-Star level stats.
He's going to be the next NBA All-Star. Move out the way, Quentin Jackson, who got a G League Elite invite.
Did he? Oh, that's exciting.
Yeah,
Can I just say real quick on the Quentin Jackson subject? A&M students, Andrew, you didn't go to A&M, so you may not get the reference, but apparently the Reed Rowdies had the best nickname for his dunks. I mean, he was known for dunking. They called him Q drops because he goes by Q. Q drops are what A&M students get. You get 3 of them in your career. Yeah. It's when you can drop a class in the middle of the semester. So everybody, A&M students know what a Q drop is. So I just thought that was a great nickname for his dunks when I heard that. So there's my contribution to the basketball.
You know what? And that's better than anything. That's better than anything I'm about to say. He. Best of luck to Quentin Jackson. That'll be next week. He'll be in Chicago looking to earn an invite to the combine later that week as well. A couple kids will earn invites. Like you said, I mean, this A&M loves. Last offseason it was Ethan Henderson. Now it's our guy Curtis Wilkerson over at Hog Sports. Thanks to him for giving me some scouting reports the past 2 off seasons. I know A&M and Arkansas have kind of been trading transfers. Last one for him on Jackson Robinson, and this year he helped me out with KK Robinson, providing a good look. I think he's a guy that's going to come with a chip on his shoulder because it kind of fallen out of the rotation in Arkansas and wasn't probably getting the playing time that he thought he was hoping to get, and he'll get the chance to play for A&M as kind of the backup point guard right alongside Wade Taylor. He's going to get an opportunity and is super talented if he can stay healthy. Had a foot injury that kind of hampered him at Arkansas. But is a guy that can be a playmaking guard and can score, and he can take Brian in one-on-one as well.
Yeah. So I know A&M's returning a lot, but also they lost Quentin Jackson and some transfers or a transfer. What's the starting lineup next year? I'm put you on the spot.
Well, the good news is they bring back 4 starters from last year, and they kind of got through, which in today's transfer portal era is kind of a big deal to bring back. They'll bring back Wade Taylor, they'll bring back Manny Obaseki, they'll bring back Henry Coleman, and they'll bring back Javonte Brown, and so let me get my roster.
I was like, so who steps in? I guess then who steps in for Quentin is the.
I think they've got some guys. I think they've got some guys that might be able to do that. Anderson Garcia is definitely a guy that could be able to step in right away into kind of that starting. Tyrese Radford. How could I forget Boots Radford? He's the other returning starter. So Manny Obaseki Henry Coleman, Boots Radford, and Wade Taylor. Mine went blank there for a second.
Oh yeah,
And then
that always happens to me. It's always at the moment where you're
it's
like,
always at the moment you
I
get.
100% know this, yes, but so
And
sorry. I
so
did put him on the spot. We didn't talk about that, so that's my bad.
I think Anderson Garcia is an interesting guy that can come in. Eric Pratt, I would caution people. He's a JUCO kid out of Seward that you know can shoot the lights out and is a really really talented offensive player. Um, Missed the last part of the year for this year and has been kind of focusing just on academics, which isn't ideal, but is set to arrive at A&M later this month, and is a guy that I really do believe can make an immediate impact. I think he had 28 points or around there in his final game that he played, and can come in and be an immediate contributor. Solomon Washington is a kid that I think is underrated as well. And, they picked up another transfer as well last week, Julius Marble. This was after we did our podcast on Anderson Garcia.
Did he also have a tryout in front of the A&M coaches? I don't remember where he's
No,
from.
he did not. He came from Michigan State.
Oh.
He's a Dallas area kid that'll have 2 years of eligibility remaining. And kind of, I think, is a guy that can fit right alongside Henry Coleman and, provide an impact on the glass. It's clear they wanted to be a better rebounding team this year. I think there's zero doubt about that. I think they wanted to be,
They just didn't have the bodies to do it.
Now
the interesting
thing that's going to work that's going to need to be resolved in the next couple of weeks is now they're with the addition of KK Robinson, they're now 2 spots over the limit. So, I know one guy. I mean, it's natural to look towards him as Ethan Henderson has a decision to make on his extra year of COVID. That's probably the one to kind of keep an eye on, and then where they're able to kind of create the extra spot or where they have the extra spot coming from is going to be kind of the key storyline to know with the transfer portal deadline passing. I know Jordan Williams is coming off a knee injury. Could he take kind of a medical redshirt year? That's definitely a possibility. He's signed with A&M, but A&M has not announced it yet, which is one, that's one potential. Whether he's healthy to come in right away will be something to watch. And, they've got to create an extra spot either way. So I think that's going to be the one interesting storyline to watch on kind of what they end up doing.
I could see Buzz just have to, walk over to Jimbo Fisher's office, be like, hey, how do you do this, man? Somehow you take a full class every year and still
How do
your
you do this? Give me some tips. You sign right up to the list, the limit every year.
I want to see Jimbo with a 12-man or whatever the limit is for basketball and
13,
see what he would be like. It's like, wait, I can't recruit 11 point guards in one class. I'm sure the running back. I mean, he loves running back, so I can see him loving point guards, just like class full of them.
Buzz, I need to get the number 1 class. I don't care if it's 7 point guards.
Yeah, exactly, man. It's like A&M will not have turnovers. Now they don't have anybody to pass to, but they will not have turnovers.
We may not be able to rebound, but we're gonna have some of the best guards.
We'll look like the Globetrotters out there with their passes. So.
And we're just gonna run right by people. So that's the way we're gonna do things. And you tell me how we're gonna get to the 13. Like I don't know how we're gonna do it, but we're gonna do it, and we'll we'll figure it. He kind of takes the figure it out later attitude. I think we'll get there. We'll make it work. Any other one? I'll have plenty more coming this week, but had the chance to get my first look as well at a big A&M target this week in Keanu Dawes, and
I actually have insight on him. All right,
you do. So I know you're a guy that kind of told me, and we talked a lot about this week. We actually. I don't know what we spend more time talking about, actually. We spend more time talking about his game and growing up, or afterwards when we talked about Hudson and Hudson Perroni, and the two of them are friends, obviously.
Yeah, same. I mean, that class at Stratford is really good at every sport. Like they're like they never lost in football and basketball. They've always been good. But he wasn't the freshman that played on varsity as a freshman. It was actually Hawkins Pauly, who's now a
Yeah.
Baylor
Now I was
tight end
putting you
commit.
on the spot there.
Hawkins Pauly was the freshman that played on varsity, but Keanu Dawes, I told you why he all of a sudden,
Yep.
Keanu Dawes was a guard, had really good ball handling skills, and then he just shot up 7 or 8 inches. So now he's that guard in a forward's body, so he can pretty much do it all, and so
Yeah.
that made teams love him.
He told me this week he was up to 6'8", around 205, and pushing 6'9", and so you can definitely see the ball skills and the guard skills. And Eric Bossy, who was out there, does our national coverage for 247 and does a great job. He came away really impressed too, looking at Keanu Dawes, and said, he looks like a great player, and you can definitely see with the guard skills kind of come into play. He can really shoot it from the outside. Has to become a better rebounder. He knows that. He talked about it. Had a couple balls slip out of his hand late, but you know what? They got the win, and so that's all that matters. It was a loaded tournament over at Who Want the Smoke. That was the name of the tournament this weekend.
All right.
So it was just a loaded tournament. Tons of A&M targets in action, but he was kind of the guy that there was a lot of buzz around the entire gym about what he did this weekend. So wanted to quickly touch on that.
Brian, is he high on A&M? Does he like
He's
A&M?
very high on A&M. He talks with A&M on a daily basis. Lyle Wolf has kind of been leading the charge there, and that was an early scout for A&M to kind of get on him last fall. And
I think they were just his second or third offer.
I think they were his second offer, and Lyle Wolf made a couple trips out to go see him during games, and it was the first school he mentioned when talking about schools that are standing out to him. Stanford. His mom is a 6th grade English teacher, and so academics are real important to him, and that's why Stanford is definitely in the mix as well. And then said he models his game after Kevin Durant, and so as kind of that point forward guy, and so Rick Barnes at Tennessee is another coach that has made a big impact on him, and so those are really 3 schools, and Texas is definitely in the mix as well as a school he wants to see. TCU as well. I think from what he said, he's going to kind of wait until this season kind of wraps up, this AAU season, because they're on the road now from now until the end of August. They'll be
and the AAU basketball is a grind.
It is crazy, and they're playing 3-4 games a night or day, and these things wrap up. I think I got out of the gym at about 11 o'clock on Saturday because somehow there was a delay, and somehow we got an hour behind schedule, and so I don't know how that I don't know how that happens or where things got out of hand.
I've covered 7-on-7 tournaments. I could see it happening.
We got an hour behind, and
yeah.
And so kids were getting out of the gym around 11 o'clock at night. So he said he's going to kind of wait until the fall and then do his official visits ahead of that first early signing period. And so I think if I had to say here right now, and I would say A&M's sitting in a pretty good spot for him. He's talked about a lot of kids from his area kind of going to A&M, and certainly knows a lot of people at A&M. And so, I think that could be one down the line that A&M really hit on in terms of evaluations. So I know, Brian, we both got to get over to high schools this afternoon. So we're going to go ahead and wrap this up. We'll be back next week, same time, same place, to discuss more, get more of Brian's scouting evaluations, and we're going to.
It's just going to be all Brian basketball. I'm going to host it by
Brian
myself.
Basketball.
It's just going to be me breaking down basketball, just making up names and seeing if you guys notice.
We'll start with number 1, and then if you know him,
there we go.
We're going to get the whiteboard out next week, and it's going to be. It's going to be. We're gonna, I know somebody said they want to do a mailbag section. Maybe we'll do a basketball mailbag section.
Yes, but only to me. Only you can ask me. It can be a pop quiz, and we'll see what I get right.
We'll do that. And hey, if you don't, I learned I was a referee back in college, and they said if you don't know a call, just say it confidently, and people will believe that you know what you're talking about. So even if you don't know what it is, just say it with confidence, and you'll end up being right. So. With that, we'll go ahead and wrap it up, and I hope everybody has a great week, and we'll be back soon with another. Just as a reminder, as always, if you like the content, mash that subscribe button on YouTube, and give us a 5-star review on Spotify and iTunes. And leave us a review, and we'd love to hear what you think and any feedback that you have. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. Have a good week, and we'll see you guys soon.